the phrase I use, which is directed towards exactly the same non-objective experience, the knowing of our own being, or its knowing of itself in us, is, are you aware? I'm not suggesting that that phrase is free from the possibility of misinterpretation, but it would be very difficult to misinterpret that phrase. Is there any doubt about what the experience, what the phrase, are you aware, could mean? So I feel that it's a very clear, direct, unambiguous, and above all, experiential way of taking the mind in the quickest, most direct and most efficient way to its source. It doesn't go via a process of thinking, well, who is the I that I'm thinking about, not sure, etc. It doesn't go, are you aware? The only place you can go to answer the question, are you aware, is the experience of being aware. And if we were to ask anyone, not just those of us interested in non-duality, but any of the, I'm not sure whether it's 7 or 8 billion now, but let's say 8 billion, any of the 8 billion of us, as long as they understood the question and were willing to participate in the experiment, if we ask them the question, are you aware? Let's say we ask them first of all the question, who am I? That question could lead to so many things. It could lead to the body, it could lead to the feelings, it could lead to thoughts. Of course, that's not what Ramana Maharshi meant. He meant, who is the one that knows? What is it that is aware of your experience? But if you ask anyone the question, am I aware? Everyone, if they understood the question and were willing to participate, would have to answer, would have to pause, check their experience, and say yes. In that pause, the mind collapses into its source. They touch their true nature in that moment. Of course, when the mind comes back, in most cases the mind would misinterpret the experience and believe that the experience of being aware belonged to the body. That's another matter, but in the actual experience itself, in the gap between the question, are you aware, and the answer, yes, there is this unmistakable return to the simple experience of being aware. In other words, we become aware of being aware. So, as I say, it's no criticism of the traditional question, who am I? If that question is really efficient for you, it's sufficient. But I feel that this is a new formulation that is very efficient. What is it that is aware of your experience? It's the same question. In order to answer that question, we have to go to that which is aware. Now, who would be the we that goes to that which is aware? The I is already that which is aware. So the we cannot go to that which is aware because it's what we are. What actually happens is that the we, the I, releases its attention from what it is aware of. And in that moment there is a sinking back of the attention into its source. And that is this self-recognition. That is not yet enlightenment. It is just the recognition of the experience, I am awareness. I am the experience of being aware. There is then an abiding in that experience, or rather as that experience, because there is no I that abides in our true nature. So it is an abiding as that experience. That in this self-abidance or self-resting, the apparently separate I, the I that we used to believe and feel ourselves to be, is gradually divested of all its superimposed limitations. The superimposed limitations are thoughts and feelings. All the layer upon layer upon layer of thought and feeling that have built up over the years, over our essential nature, the original mind or pure consciousness. So in this self-abidance there is a gradual divesting of the eye of awareness from all superimposed limits until it stands revealed at some point, naked, without any adornment, without any, unmixed with anything other than itself. But I'm not experiencing a state now. Or, if I'm experiencing a state, it's called the waking state, just the regular, ordinary waking state. I was bitten by a mosquito this afternoon, so my ankle is itching. I'm looking at all of your faces. It's a little bit hot and muggy in here. I'm trying to hear your question, but it's a little boomy, so I'm finding it difficult. I didn't have enough lunch, so I'm hungry. So that's what I'm experiencing now. I'm sorry if that's a disappointment to you.
It isn't. It isn't. What I'm referring to is the peace that you talk about that goes beyond understanding and is a state that you always are experiencing. No. You know where I'm coming, but I'm referring to. You're pulling my leg.
No, I'm not always experiencing a state. A state is something that comes and goes. I'm not experiencing a special state or a special experience. Enlightenment is the recognition of the one who experiences.
Okay, that one then. Then I'm talking about that one. I don't have good words to elaborate.
But are you experiencing now? Are you having an experience now?
No. Well,
you're not having any experience now. You're not seeing this room or hearing this.
Oh, that one, yeah. Well,
that's by experience. I just mean this ordinary experience: the sound of my voice, the thoughts,
yeah.
the sensation of your hand on the mic,
sure.
the temperature of it. You're having an experience now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So am I.
Yeah.
So not much difference between us in that
True.
respect. Now, tell us about what it is that is currently knowing your experience.
I guess just the knowing.
Yes, but tell us about that one, because it's what you call I. Yes, you say, I am hearing the sound of your voice. I feel my hand on the mic. So whatever it is that is knowing,
yeah,
or experiencing, this ordinary experience is what you call I. Just the very not a special I.
Yeah.
Just the regular I, the only I there is. Now, tell us about that knowing I.
I get what you're saying.
No, tell us about it.
I don't know.
You don't know what?
What to tell.
What?
What to tell. Like, it's just knowing...
Tell us more about it. Because have you not been knowing your experience all your life?
Yeah, the thing is that as long as I'm here, I'm good, and then it's...
No, but even when you're at home and life is a bit more difficult, the food's not quite so good, and you have to work a little bit out, whatever is going on at home, are you not still knowing your experience?
I am.
Now, is whatever it is that is knowing your experience here different from whatever it is that is knowing your experience at home?
My experience is different.
No, that wasn't the question.
Okay.
I know your experience is different.
Okay.
My experience is also different when I'm at home.
Okay.
The question was, is what is experiencing, what is knowing your experience here, different from whatever it is that knows your experience when you are at home?
No, it isn't.
No different.
No.
What about whatever it was that was knowing your experience when you were a 5-year-old girl? Is there any difference between the one that knew your experience then and the one that knows your experience now?
It can be, no.
No, not it can't be. I don't want you to work this out. It's just it is or it isn't.
It isn't.
Yes, it's the same.
Yeah.
So already you can see now that whatever it is that is knowing your experience now always remains in the same condition. What you experience differs from moment to moment. What I experience differs from moment to moment. But that which experiences it always remains the same.
Correct.
It's in the same condition now.
Correct.
As it was when you and I were 5-year-old boys and girls. Yes?
Yeah.
In other words, it hasn't changed or it hasn't aged.
But it feels different.
No, your feelings are different, but that which knows your feelings is the same. Take two feelings, a depression and a marvelous ecstasy. When you are depressed, you know the feeling of depression, yes?
Yes.
When you are feeling ecstatic, you know the feeling of ecstasy, yes?
Yes.
The feeling of depression and the feeling of ecstasy are two very different feelings.
Okay.
But that which knows the depression and that which knows the ecstasy are the same.
Correct.
They're independent of the content of your experience.
Yeah.
Is that clear?
It is clear. But
Now, is that knowing any more present in me than it is in you?
feels like it.
No, but you are knowing your experience. I am knowing my experience. Our experiences are very different. But the knowing with which each of us knows our experience is in exactly the same condition. All I'm trying to do is make the nature of that knowing clear to you. In you, that knowing is still mixed up with the content of your experience.
Okay.
No, that wasn't convincing.
I see your point. Do I experience it? No. So...
But you say, do I experience it? No. But I asked you about the condition of knowing on 3 separate occasions. Your current experience, your experience when you were at home, and your experience when you were a 5-year-old boy. And you told us all, from your experience, that the knowing which knows each of those 3 experiences is the same. Now, that is your experience. You were talking from your experience.
Yeah, but the mind is so quick in intellectualizing it or conceptualizing it, then it goes just to another department and then...
It's fine. I'm also conceptualizing my experience. Nothing wrong with that. But the experience that you are conceptualizing is the experience that the knowing with which your experience is known is always in the same condition. It is not limited by the depression or the ecstasy. It is not qualified by either the feeling of depression or ecstasy or the taste of tea or indeed anything. It is unqualified, unconditioned. It has no age. It has no limits. That is your experience. You just don't trust it.
I guess it's going to come by the time when,
Just as a practice over these next few days, several times a day, instead of looking at your experience, whatever you are seeing, whatever meal you are tasting, whatever you are feeling, whatever you are sensing, just ask yourself the question, what is it that knows my experience? And allow that question to take you to that which knows your experience. And then ask yourself that question at several times under several different circumstances throughout the day, and see that although your circumstances change from moment to moment, that knowing is always in the same condition. It's always exactly the same. It's like the light of the sun. It illuminates or knows your experience, but it never changes. No matter how agitated or at peace you are, no matter how happy or sad you are, no matter how much pain you are in, or how healthy or sick, or no matter what experience you're having, that knowing is always present. It is no more present in Ramana Maharshi or the Buddha. It was no more present in the Ramana Maharshi or the Buddha than it is in you and I. It is always present. It is always in the same pristine condition. It is never disturbed by experience. It never ages. And it's yourself. It's what you call I. All I'm trying to do is get you to see I clearly for what it is.
I have seen it a couple of clips that you did on the YouTube, and I totally got it. My challenge is that it's just so quickly forgotten, and then...
Well, that's fine. If it's quickly forgotten, just keep reminding yourself
and
until the understanding becomes more stable.
So then I'll be able to experience life as you do. Right?
Don't worry about my experience.
Okay.
Just if you have these glimpses of understanding through our conversations or YouTube clips or through whatever means,
okay,
keep revisiting this understanding, and until the pathway from experience to yourself gets shorter and shorter. So and visit it many, many times during the day until it starts to become your norm. Instead of just visiting it fleetingly, you begin to stay there a little bit longer until this knowing comes out of the background and you feel it more present in your life.
When you were talking about what could be bigger than being aware, and you mentioned words like omniscient and omnipotent, I don't think I'd thought of those words, unlimited and ever-present. But omniscient and omnipotent have a different quality to them. And do you feel omniscient and omnipotent? Do you have that connection to that experience?
Everything that is known, is it not known by awareness?
Yes.
That's it. Awareness is that that knows all, that is omniscient. It doesn't mean that my finite mind contains all the knowledge there is to be known, but it does mean that awareness contains all the knowledge there is to be known. What else could know knowledge apart from awareness? Let's say there was something else apart from awareness that knew experience. What would that be? What would its first quality have to be in order to know something? It would have to be aware.
It's just, I guess it leads to an imagination beyond what is directly known here. Like, I get what you're saying about knowing,
yes.
but it's somehow. I mean, it's interesting because you've said, I think at least 5 to 10 times on this retreat, how the finite mind, absolute consciousness has to incarnate as a finite mind to know something finite. And I've been mulling over how that has to then apply, that there's some way that we move ourselves back and forth from being absolute to finite. I mean, that's almost even the direct experience of focusing is almost like finite consciousness to the defocused would be another way of saying absolute consciousness.
Yes. Consciousness absolutely unfocused. There are no objects
Yes.
in its perception. There is just itself. And as it focuses, objects come into existence, yes. So the finite mind is like the focusing of consciousness.
Yes.
Or the narrowing of consciousness. And so the finite mind is, each of our finite minds is just a very small segment of the total possibilities, the total field of consciousness.
Yes.
So the finite mind is extremely limited. What is appearing in my finite mind now is extremely limited. But the knowing that knows that limited knowledge is not itself limited. The known is always limited. The knowing is always unlimited. And just because the knowing with which our experience is known is unlimited doesn't mean that our finite minds should therefore have access to all knowledge at all times.
Do you think that's a confusion? Because I know in the story of the Buddha and in certain traditions they actually speak about omniscience in almost like in a literal way. Like they don't just speak of omniscience as knowing, but as in that embodied being there's omniscience. That's one of the attributes of an enlightened one.
Well, the enlightened one, there is only one enlightened one, and that is awareness. So if that's what the Buddhists mean when they talk about the omniscience of the enlightened one, they're right. The omniscience of infinite awareness, the enlightened one. There is no other enlightened one. The person is never enlightened. Enlightenment is the recognition that we are not a person, we are infinite consciousness. Some people that don't understand that think that the person is enlightened, and therefore they project magical qualities onto their teacher. And they put their teacher up on the pedestal and think that their teacher has access to all knowledge or is omniscient, but that's a misunderstanding. Keep turning your mind towards its source in the way we've been discussing this weekend. There's a beautiful description of this inward-facing path that I described this morning. There's a beautiful description of it in the Old Testament, in the book of Isaiah, where he says, "Thou wilt keep in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on thee." Thou wilt keep in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on thee. That's the essence of meditation, the essence of prayer, the essence of self-inquiry. Whose mind is stayed on thee, that mind, whose mind is stayed on thee, whose mind rests in its source. Thou, the source, will keep in perfect peace the mind that rests in thee. And the mind that is continually turned towards its source and resting, whenever circumstances permit, resting in its source, will taste more and more the peace and the perfume of our true nature, the source of the mind. Keep going there, keep visiting it, keep turning your mind towards it, and it will gather your mind in.